I've recently hit 5,000 hours in Payday 2. Well, actually it wasn't recently, and if we count my second account, then it wasn't recently whatsoever. But I've never formally reviewed the game. I'll break the secret to you before this video starts though, and I'm not going to formally review the game. That's why this is my review of Payday 2, kinda. What am I supposed to talk about? The graphics? This is a 10-year-old game, come on, no one cares. I also don't really play enough games to give a quote-unquote objective opinion, so instead I want to talk about my 3 favorite and least favorite elements of this game, and then give a final verdict. Of the few universally praised elements of Payday 2, the soundtrack is one of them. Now you may think it's a bit strange for me, of all people, to be praising the music of Payday, considering I usually just have my music off, but that doesn't really say much. I have music off in almost all games. However, I did want to mention something that I don't see getting praised as much. When talking about the soundtrack, people always mention Simon Viklund. Don't get me wrong, his work is really good. However, he hasn't been the game's musician for years. I want to give credit to the other musicians, but above everyone else, Gustavo Coutinho. Over the years of this game, it's changed. Although I absolutely love something like The Mark, it just doesn't fit the game anymore. It's dark and heavy, something the game hasn't been since like, I don't know, whenever we stopped robbing banks and started fulfilling prophecies. On the other hand, Gustavo's music is bright and punchy. The tracks fit whatever map they came out with, which Simon's also did, but one thing I think Gustavo does better is making each song unique. Although a track like Breach 2015 does sound good, comparing it to a lot of Simon's other works from the time, well, they have similar feels. On the other hand, Gold Rush is completely different from Darklight Strike, Payback Roulette, and Inferno Showdown, even though they're all from the same campaign. Now, could I do an in-depth analysis of all the music in this game? No, I'm no musician. Actually, I lied. Here's a trophy I have. But I'm not going to do that. I feel like some things work best unexplained, and whatever feelings you may have toward the soundtrack may not match up to mine. But I know you love the soundtrack, because everyone does. I love the variety in this game. If you take a small look at my video history, you may notice that trying stuff out is something I do a lot. Although a lot of weapons are sort of just copy-pasted stat-wise, visually and audibly they're all different. Well, as long as you don't look at the new weapons. However, I just don't use the new stuff, and stick with the old and more or less unique weapons, so from my perspective, the variety element of this game is great. But that's just weapons. There's so many different perk decks, different skills, and different maps to play on. You could play this game for over 10,000 hours without ever needing to repeat a build if you really wanted to. However, many people just don't, and I find that very unfortunate. It's perfectly fine to find something you like and stick to it, but so many people just jump into the game and immediately search for whatever is the best in this or that category without even trying anything. Then they never bother to try anything once they've gotten comfortable, and then rhetoric like X or Y isn't viable starts. My MMA coach always tells me it's important to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and I, as the community hipster, try to show off everything that I can to encourage others to try stuff out too. Maybe you never thought about playing a perk deck in a certain way, or maybe you've never even seen a certain weapon being used, but one of my videos has shown it to you and you made a build with it. I would consider that a success, but who knows how many people I can realistically reach. That said, it doesn't really matter. I play the game for myself and just make videos because I can at the end of the day, and the variety is part of why I love it. Games should really be judged by their gameplay, so obviously the gameplay is something that I adore in Payday 2. Now, I'm not someone who really goes out of my way to find different games to play. Whenever I hear about something, I remember it, but that's really the extent. So take this with a grain of salt, but I don't think there's any game that has gameplay quite like Payday 2. I've played a decent amount of co-op shooters, and they all have their ups and downs, but none of them give quite the same feel as Payday 2. Let's start with Payday the Heist, for example. You'd think that a game in the same franchise will have similar gameplay. Well, aside from the title and some of the characters, Payday the Heist is nothing like Payday 2. I mentioned this in the music section, but where Payday 2 is more bright and punchy, Payday the Heist is dark and heavy. This reflects not only in theme, but in gameplay too. Payday the Heist plays much slower than the frantic chaos of 2. Different strokes for different folks, but I prefer the fast-paced, dynamic gameplay of Payday 2. Another game that I've played that is a co-op shooter type thing is Left 4 Dead 2. Considering the influences Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 had on the Payday franchise, the gameplay is similar, right? Not really, no. The Payday games have you fighting back enemies to reach objectives, whereas Left 4 Dead is more of a helplessness simulator. You can fight back the Horde, but not forever. In Left 4 Dead, at least in my experience, you need to get yourself from point A to point B while rationing supplies like health and ammo. You can pick up a gun here and there, but there's no hostage taker or enemy ammo drops. The general gameplay of Left 4 Dead games, or I guess the second since I never played the first, is significantly more survival based than Payday, which makes sense for a zombie game. Payday 2 is more of a clear out the area and then hold down to do objectives. Well, speaking of holding down an area, how about Killing Floor 2? This is another co-op shooter that has zombies, but this game is nothing like Payday 2. This is not a review of Killing Floor, so I'll try to cut this as short as I can, but holy shit, Killing Floor is boring. It's like taking the holdout game mode of Payday 2, and then that's it, really. That's the whole game. The only reason I have 20 hours in this game is because I used to play it with my cousin. I don't think I've even put 2 hours into this game playing alone. Deep Rock Galactic is a stellar co-op shooter, don't get me wrong, but it's not Payday. Payday 2 has constant and permanent pressure from the enemies, but Deep Rock doesn't. Although the objectives in Deep Rock are more interesting, you only ever do them while enemies are absent. I guess you could make the same argument for Payday 2 and its fades, but the ratio of pushing back enemies and doing objectives are nothing alike. And finally, although this game isn't a co-op shooter, it's very similar to Payday 2. Bank Robber is a game where you rob a bank. I paid good money for this. Anyway, there's nothing that can scratch that Payday 2 itch other than Payday 2. Again, from the games that I've played. Maybe a game exists out there that can imitate and even outclass Payday 2, but I haven't yet seen it. Once the gameplay of Payday 2 grabs you and holds you, good luck prying free of its grip. It can be some of the most addicting gameplay you'll ever experience, or at the very least, it has been for me. For all the praise I can give Payday 2, it's hard to ignore the flaws. One of the biggest flaws in this game is the QA testing. There's always been this meme that there is no QA testing for this game at all, and there's good reason for that. Payday 2 is filled top to bottom with bugs, glitches, exploits, visual errors, text errors, bad descriptions, and above all else, terrible optimization. Now, I've had a pretty strong PC for about half a year, but before then, playing Payday 2 was hilariously demanding. I'd have been lucky to run a map at a stable 40 FPS, 30 if it was newly released. And that was still on a PC. Godspeed to laptop players. Of course, people have gotten around the atrocious performance by murdering the game with mods, but that's not really a fix, is it? The minimum and recommended specs on Steam for Payday 2 are literally just lies, and that's a problem in itself. While we're on the Steam specs thing, let's talk about the size of the game. 83 gigabytes. What in Almir's name is this? Supposedly, the reason for this size is because of constant asset reuse, but that's hard to call a good reason. The abysmal quality assurance that this game may or may not have is unacceptable. Although terrible optimization can make the game feel literally unplayable, it doesn't make the game literally unplayable. Cheaters do make the game literally unplayable. Well, not literally. Alright, look, cheating in PvE, nobody cares if you do it offline. However, going into online causes problems. In online, there's two types of cheaters you'll find. Those who want to make the game easier for themselves, and those who just want to ruin things for others. You know the first kind. These will be your P3D, carry stacker, silent assassin, better bots, and on users. If they're hosting, just don't join them. If you're hosting, just kick them. If you join someone else's lobby and someone else is cheating there, well, now you have a problem. Not everyone has mods to see certain things like teammate skills, dex, or damage output, so even if you know someone is cheating, convincing the host that they are is not so easy, especially when the cheater just goes, nuh-uh. Now, the second type of cheater is one that is out to cause problems. Mod hiders, crashers, troll menus, and the likes can all be found with more or less ease if you play pubs long enough. Let's meet our friend Frozen Storm. If you've played a lot of DS public games, maybe you've seen this guy before. He's a player that hides his mods, uses a stoic buff, has a toggleable aimbot, and also cheated his infamy under the claim of, I just used holdout to grind. He's one of the few people I've ever banned from my games by hand because Cheater Kicker can't read hidden mods. But now he's not a problem, right? Well, no, because he can still join public games I'm in. And when I call him out for cheating, he stomps around like an angry child and uses his mods to try and stop me. So, like before, the host needs to be convinced that someone is cheating before they kick them. But now here's our problem. How is the host supposed to know this person is cheating? Most people use 97% of their brain power to try and survive on BS, with the other 3% dedicated to keep their heart beating, eyes blinking, and lungs breathing. They can't really keep track of the other players in the lobby. I, however, can. I've played so much of this game that even the highest difficulty is just muscle memory, which is why I find it very easy to keep track of not just my health and gameplay, but others in the lobby as well. So just because I notice things like Frozen Storm hitting incredible shots in rapid succession, or taking less damage on Stoic, doesn't mean the host will. Here he is trying to freeze me with a mod, not realizing I have anti-freeze, so he freezes himself and leaves. Clearly not the most clever individual. And because people usually don't play DS for fun, but rather to get their achievements and leave, this process with Frozen Storm repeats every couple months with different hosts. The achievements element, of course, is not really a problem for me. I already have all of my DS achievements. But if someone is trying to get them and has to deal with a cheater hiding themselves like this, or crashing their games, or other forms of cheating, well, that's kinda gross. But whatever, no big deal, just go play another game, right? Here's where it becomes a problem for me specifically. As the leading YouTuber of this community, I try to keep a consistent schedule. I find hosting to be less interesting than joining games, but sometimes I just sit on CrimeNet for 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes at a time, and not a single legit lobby comes up. And when I host, kicking cheaters ends up in this bug that ends the game. If enough of these shenanigans happen, well, I don't have a video, do I? Of course, I could play in a lobby with other friends, but I feel like that shows off a build in an inauthentic way, so I don't really like to do it. Since this is my review of Payday 2 kinda, cheaters are one of the most annoying parts, even if they really wouldn't impact the average player that much. However, something that does impact every single player of this game, and what I find to be most infuriating about Payday 2, is the team behind it. Overkill, or I guess it's Starbreeze now, is not fit to keep this game running whatsoever. This company just doesn't give a shit about their game, no matter what they may tell you. I speak with full sincerity when I say this game should never have gotten an update past the White House, and depending who you ask, even before then. Almost everything since then has been a complete blunder, and had Starbreeze not gone bankrupt, then the game would have been left in peace. However, after the failure of Overkill's The Walking Dead and the underperformance of Raid World War II, Bo Anderson found himself piloting a sinking ship. So Quirky Bo, quirky as he is, decided to poke some more holes and invest in Star VR. Do you own this thing? Do you know anyone who does? Me neither. And so, Starbreeze went bankrupt. But what does this have to do with Payday 2? Well, Starbreeze had one cash cow, and that was Payday 2. After having promised no more DLC, the border crossing heist came out, and so followed a series of lazy and poorly made DLC for fast money. I can't blame anyone for this part, well, except for Bo Anderson. People need to put food on their table. However, ever since Overkill came back from the brink of death, they've just been releasing shit. At the beginning, it was just some DLC, but everything went downhill after the open beta. Balancing mistake after mistake after mistake, and then it spread to more than just balance, with the new Texas Heat campaign being some of the worst content I've seen released in this game. I posted a community post about how bad the new weapon pack was, and I find it kind of funny how many people didn't understand the point. I don't feel like turning this into a response video, but there are some things to highlight here. Just because Death Valley in California is hotter than Australia doesn't suddenly make Australia cold. Both are hell on earth. Other games getting worse updates, or even no updates, doesn't make the ones Payday 2 gets good. Do you know why people complain? There are two reasons. First, they just want to complain. Second, they want better. I'm sure there's a lot of people who fall into Group 1, but I reside firmly in Group 2. I know Overkill can do better, but that's because anyone can do better. There's so little effort that I go as far as to say that there is no effort. So when they release unbalanced, poorly conceived slop, I'm not going to praise it, and you shouldn't either. The developers and a more casual audience may not give a shit about the state of the game, but I do. They see it as a cash cow, but with just a bit more effort. Good, truly good content could be released that would be worth consumer money. And the final comment I want to look at is, just don't buy it. It doesn't work that way. Even if I don't buy McShay Weapon Pack 1, someone who does is free to join my lobby, place gas on all the spawn points, and then there's literally no interactions with enemies for the rest of the game. If you want to play like that, just go cheat. Gas is so poorly balanced that there's little to no difference between it and just cheating. So what am I left to do? Kick players for using what they like? Then who's the villain? Well, all of us, really. This is a game about crime. There is also the second point that I want Payday 3 to be a success. I want Payday 3 to be as popular and even more than Payday 2, and the only way to do that is to support the developers. I know that the main team is hard at work with 3, and that's why 2 has been left to the B team per se, but there just isn't any other way of supporting the devs besides buying the DLC. Deep Rock Galactic released a supporter DLC, which just gives some cosmetics, and I bought it. I think the devs for that game are doing an excellent job and deserve support. But with Overkill, I have no real choice. From not documenting changes in the changelog, to not saying what content DLCs even give you, to only fixing multi-year-old bugs when the solution is handed to them on a silver platter, the developers of this game are unforgivable. And so what is the conclusion? Would I recommend this game to someone who's considering buying it? Without a doubt, yes, but under 2 stipulations. First, don't play Death Sentence unless you're with a group of friends. Second, don't buy DLC post-Legacy Collection. Like I mentioned, the gameplay, variety, and soundtrack of this game are great, and in their field, second to none. However, the issues from bad quality assurance and cheaters only rears its ugly head on the highest difficulty. Death Sentence is the difficulty where people will start to cheat, where a small game inconsistency will cause you to die, and where people start to get mad and toxic to each other. Stay out of Death Sentence unless you're playing with people you know, and you'll never have to experience these issues to the extent that I, or any other Death Sentence mains have. But what about the developers? Didn't I say they were unforgivable? Yes, they aren't. And yet I'm still going to forgive them. Look, I love this game. I fucking love it. Ever since I started scripting and voicing my videos, I've gotten better and better at putting down my thoughts on metaphorical paper for others to understand, and I have no idea how to even begin explaining how important this game is to me. It's been with me through the worst times of my life so far. I've met some of the best people I know on it, and it's helped me discover passions I didn't know I had. Here, check out this shirt I have. In high school, I heard that one of the classes I could take allowed students to make a custom shirt, and so I took it. I took an entire class just to make this shirt. Although it hurts me to watch the devs make mistake after mistake to destroy a game I love so much, I have hope for them. It's like a child I've watched grow up, and even though they've turned to drugs, started stealing money from my wallet, and stopped talking to me at dinner, I'll love it still. Payday 2 is not my favorite game, maybe not even in my top 3, but I'm not going to sit here and lie to you saying that the game has not been worth my every penny. I'm not some idiot to put 5,000 hours into something and then try to lie to myself that I don't like it. There's a good reason that everyone who says they hate this game and how terrible it is and such, always come back to it. Payday 2 is a flawed, horribly flawed game, but it's a masterpiece I can't help but love.